Thank you for tuning into the Starving Artist podcast, bringing you meaningful conversations on a weekly basis. And particularly for this week, we will discuss an infamous character trait that hopefully we are all aware of, particularly for our creatives. And the things we'll cover is, why do we procrastinate? Is the procrastinator the same as the lazy person? Are they the same people? Or are they different? We'll see. And then, does the procrastinator create meaningful work? Or is it sort of just rushed and unfinished work? How to function as a procrastinator. And in the meantime, you know me. My name is Rocky Cotard. I am one of your hosts. I'm an illustrator in the Boston area. Thank you for being here today. I'll turn it over to you, X.
All right. Thank you, Rocky, for getting us started. And I am Professor X, y'all. Now we can kick it to Katrina for social media.
You can watch this entire podcast on our YouTube channel at Starving Artist Podcast. You also see some funny bloopers and a dance battle between Rocky and Xavier, which I'm sure you'll find entertaining. You can also listen on SoundCloud at Starving Artist. You can connect with us on Instagram at starving_artist_podcast or on Facebook at starvingartist.fb. And you can now support us on Patreon. So head over to our Patreon page at Imagine Action Studios for exclusives like extended interviews and behind the scenes with artists and discounts on merchandise soon to come and much more content exclusively for our Patreon members. So as Rocky and Xavier mentioned, a big thank you to all of our subscribers and followers. We definitely appreciate all the positive feedback we've received so far. Some of you have sent us text messages saying how much you appreciate our episodes, but be sure to like and subscribe on the actual online platforms as well. And if this is your first time listening, welcome, and make sure to hit those subscribe buttons.
Again, this is episode 2, as you can see on the board. Destined to Procrastinate. And it's a really good conversation. We were really excited when we were talking about this in pre-production. How it affects everyone, and it mainly affects creatives. One of the big things is there's a misconception that procrastination equals laziness. People who are lazy, they procrastinate the most.
Yeah.
And doing some research, that's not the case. People who are lazy, there's a notion that they just don't care. Yeah. People who procrastinate, they do care, but they just have the stumbling. There's hurdles in the way. There's things that are blocking them from actually doing what they actually do care about. So, I thought that was really fascinating.
X, do you identify as a procrastinator?
I used to.
Yes.
Wow,
that's interesting.
Past tense. Yeah.
So we'll get into that conversation too, because I think as you were speaking, I do think in some ways I do procrastinate, but I know for sure that I'm not lazy.
Yeah.
So I'll do a lot of work, but sometimes it's like, this is more pressing. Yeah. So it's stuff like that. So I definitely think that's a good point to bring out. And it's very, it makes it kind of easier on the person who's working, because it lets you know to not feel as ashamed as you might feel when you procrastinate, because I know that's a thing that happens.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. We were both doing some research. Lazy people simply don't do anything and they're just fine with it. But procrastinators, on the other hand, they have the desire to actually do something, but they can't force themselves to start. Yeah. So, it's a sad story. We all have sad stories. We all have these stories, Tell us on social media, some of the worst times. I can think back at Leslie. We're all Leslie alumni here. I've had some terrible times in classes where I wanted to get something done and I just didn't. And I ended up skipping a class, and I just didn't. I cared, but I just didn't care. It's almost like I didn't care enough.
Yeah, I think for me, procrastination really deals with whenever I engage with any job or any, even from when I was younger, I would start with a very full workforce, be very energetic about starting, and then it would taper off, and then I'm like, it's not really due then. So let's kind of get it later. But I think I just really appreciate the lazy point. The lazy person doesn't really want to do the work. but the procrastinator probably has the interest in doing it, but they don't know where to begin.
Well, here's something interesting. When I was doing some of this research, they said the worst offenders of procrastination are people who are highly intelligent and people who are very creative. So, a lot of us fall into that, and it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, actually, because like it's not something you want to be known for, but that paralysis by analysis type of thing we talked about last episode. And that terminology, artist block or artist paralysis, the paralysis by analysis, all of that comes from the writer's block. And that term was coined in around 1947 or so.
I actually also think that like sometimes creatively you may not have artist block here, but then you have it in another project. So maybe you haven't had the tools to really complete one thing yet. And sometimes I found that it's been helpful to kind of let something sit and simmer mentally. It doesn't mean years. Maybe like, a couple days, not a couple weeks, but a week or two. And like, I think sometimes like the word procrastination just becomes something that's said without actually acknowledging the full measure of what may be going on in the individual.
And that's interesting too that you say that, because when we were looking at the info, did you see what the actual word meant? It's a Latin word.
What does it mean?
It means belonging to tomorrow. So procrastinus.
Oh, that's nice. I like it.
Belonging to tomorrow. I thought that was kind of funny.
I think looking on the things we found, some things that may not be the way that I would go. Some of the definitions were like somebody who can lie to themselves and make themselves believe it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is procrastination self-deception?
I think that's a huge topic, because it's basically like you're convincing yourself not to do something. So think about that. You're convincing yourself not to do something.
That makes me scared a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. It kind of scares me. I'm like, am I lying to myself?
Yeah, it is. It's basically like lying to yourself and then believing in the lie.
Jeez.
Like, that's kind of deep, right?
That deserves like a moment of silence.
Right.
I don't know. That feels a little too heavy because I think I was mentioning earlier, there's like, with the term procrastination, it's not necessarily everybody that's shaming you, but then you feel ashamed because you're like, oh, I should have gotten this done, but I didn't get it done.
Yeah.
But also, it's for some things, it's not the end of the world. For some things, it is,
Yeah.
Anywho, that's just an interesting point. I think that's something I'm going to have to think about with the lying to yourself piece. Like, how truthful do you think that is?
From the things I've read when we were preparing for this, a lot of different sources were saying that, like, it's self-deception. They even try to equate it to like a person who abuses things, like the feeling that you get after like admitting and like coming to grips. And I was kind of like, that could be true, like, because like a person who is, when you feel guilty about something, it kind of weighs on your conscience, and only you know how bad you feel. I know how bad I felt. I really had to like look in the mirror, like I'm looking in the camera right now, and like say like, stop it, listen to yourself, self-regulation. That's the other thing too, self-regulation. If you're not a person who can self-regulate, then you're kind of just like all over the place.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I guess it's a control of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. I think it's one of those things that's easy to say, but it's like, how do you do it? But in some ways, it's just like gutting your schedule and saying, this is the vital thing to do, and this is not important. And it's easy to say, but I can also say that I'm working on it too. So, yeah, but that's a very interesting point. I think that's something that I would definitely encourage our viewers to add to the discussion. I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
What is like your points of procrastination, and how do you feel about the terminology of, procrastination is you lying to yourself? Is that actually true for you? Do you feel like that's the case? Deadlines, having them, and not having them. And so how do they help a procrastinator? One is working under pressure. We've heard this.
Yeah.
Working under pressure brings out the best in us. Is that true?
I'm back and forth with this one because I think some people can be clutch.
Oh, clutch.
Yeah.
Curry.
Yeah.
Not. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Celtics.
Yeah. With Celtics,
Yeah. Sorry.
You
No
can't be
Curry.
talking about
No
Golden
Curry.
State like that.
No Curry.
No.
Sorry.
Although he can shoot, but I think there's some people who are very clutch and they intentionally, because they're so good at what they do, they can wait. But this is the thing where I kind of fall on the other side.
Yeah.
You can be really good and wait till the last minute, but imagine if you took that time and you actually like built up like weeks in advance.
Yeah.
Your work would be probably better.
Far better.
Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of back and forth. Like, yeah, you can get the deadlines, and maybe the clients don't know, but like, man, I could have probably did better than this.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like I hear you.
Yeah.
But there's
where do
also
you
the
fall?
flip side.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally agree. I do agree with that point. But then if you're the kind of artist that's pretty nitpicky and a perfectionist about your work, what does that mean? So if you have extra time and they
That's a
don't
good
rip
point.
the work from you,
That's a great
are
point.
you going to actually finish? Sometimes for me, for some projects, I'll say, this is it. Like, you work up until this point, and you can add a lot of detail, you can add a lot of things. And that's actually a conversation I've had with our guests. But there's periods in time where
Hold
it's
on,
like...
we have a guest?
Huh?
We have a guest?
We do have a guest.
Oh,
mentioned
yes,
the guest to you
yes.
guys.
That's right, yeah.
So there's a period in time when it's like you have to be done because the project is a collective project. And so I think sometimes the pressure of being done and getting to that finish line is nice. And particularly for me, I remember one project that came up when this phrase came into mind. It was a Frida Kahlo portrait that I had worked on.
Okay.
And it was due the next day.
Wait a minute, that's the portrait you did with the complementary, the blue and the orange?
Yep, exactly. One of the pieces that I've sold the most of throughout time. I think I made like 60 plus shirts, and all of them were sold, and I was fortunate to be able to keep the one that's mine, which my mom took. So anyways, I worked on it in the middle of the night on the day that it was due, and I had no thoughts prior, and I did procrastinate it for a long time. Yeah. It ended up being a piece that I really value now, and I'm glad I made it. So that's one case, but when it comes to paintings and stuff, giving myself the time to work on it piece by piece, those can be nice, but sometimes you make beautiful things out of nothing, out of nowhere, So that would be my one kind of pushback on that statement.
Yeah, I mean, when you came at it, when you said perfectionist, I think that kind of crosses into, that could be a whole nother topic and conversation. A person who's a perfectionist, maybe that time is not good, and you have those deadlines. I remember in school they mentioned to have like a timer, work strictly by time, so that you don't cross that threshold of not knowing when to finish, and
Gotcha.
You can't finish because you're just like, no, this is not done, and it looks great.
Yeah, and it kind of leads off into the self-regulation thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think like the ability to be your own boss.
Yeah.
Because your boss sometimes is like, hey, we need it done to this level, and once you get there, send it over. We're moving on.
Yeah.
So having to like be that person to tell yourself, stop it or start it.
You just gave me this weird picture in my head that you have like, all these Rockies around. And there's like multiple Rockies like ordering you, and you're just like, no, I'm not listening to you today.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's kind of like. You have to listen to orders that you give yourself.
Yeah. I think that definitely is it. It functions on both ends. Sometimes I'm working like on an illustration, and I've been working on it all day, and I should get food. And it's like,
yeah.
oh, shoot, Rocky, get food now. Or it can work on the other way. It's like, wow, you haven't done a painting in like a couple months. Let's work on it. So that self-regulation is nice. I think I would love to hear how some of our guests choose to like self-regulate.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you manage yourself within your art practice? Or whatever practice it may be? Feel free to let us know. And this is definitely a conversation that we want everybody to participate in, as much as it is connected to the artist that's not starving. It's also connected to the various individuals in many different fields. Yeah. Time for us to move on to our commercial break. When we come back, we have a very fun game that we will go ahead and bring our guest to work on with us. So you'll definitely get a chance to experience that.
To you. Let's start with you, Deborah.
Okay. What it means to me is family. And family means everything. Because when Garrett was diagnosed at the age of 5, and we had to figure out what autism meant and what would be the best services for him, it took us on a journey as a family. And we thought about what the family needs. The family needs shelter, it needs food, it needs love and support and resources. So our agency is designed to enhance the lives of everyone that has an individual with autism. And we do that by everyday living, social skills, healthcare resources, family support groups, and mainly resources. And the individual has to be active. We teach healthy exercising, healthy eating. The family needs to be educated about all of the services that are afforded to them, because you just are not born with autism and it stops at age 5 or it stops at age 10. So it's everything. That's what we want to address and affect the lives of individuals on all accounts. But we have a secret ingredient. We do it with fun.
Welcome back to the Starving Artist Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed our little commercial break. Now you get to find out who the special guest is. Yeah. Today we have Michael Talbot with us today. Woo-hoo. Amazing artist, illustrator, designer, animator, illustrator. Gotta say it all.
Jack of all trades.
He does have an artist bio on his website, and I definitely want to recommend that you all go check it out. It's talbotsart.com.
Correct.
It's amazing work, amazing illustrations. But I definitely wanted to take a snippet of the things that you were talking about via your artist bio. I was particularly touched by this quote. You wrote, "I don't see myself as anything more than the typical artist who enjoys his craft and seeks to make an impact on someone's life. With all that is going on in the world, I acknowledge that it is necessary to have a chorus of voices bringing light to what is important and what us as a people need." Sorry about that. All right.
Okay. All right.
However, for me, my desire is to be the voice that soothes, inspires, and motivates others to ponder the wonders of life. I seek to be the light that helps them to look forward and look beyond to the joys and the happiness that can and will be, to hang in the balance of reality and wonder. Beautiful.
Wow. You know what? That was solid. That was poetry right there. Poetry in motion.
Yeah,
And
really
Rocky's
love
struggling to read that. But I mean, I think
was
I got it.
emotional.
I think I got the gist of it.
I was emotional mid-reading. So give me a break. So now we have a very fun game that we play with our guests.
Okay.
Rapid fire questions, Michael.
Rapid
This is
fire.
aggressive.
Okay.
It's rapid fire. So to get us started, please, X.
All right. First question. Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark?
Tony Stark.
Coffee or tea?
T.
Oh, you're right.
Adidas or Nike?
Adidas.
December or January?
December.
Taste
birthday.
or sight?
Sight.
Oh, God. Money or power?
Money.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Fly or swim?
Fly.
Jamaica or Alaska?
Jamaica.
Come on now. Why did you put that one on there? All right. Comics or novels?
Comics.
Okay.
Ink or digital?
Ink.
All right.
Okay, he did pretty good.
Sorry.
Alaska.
The Jamaica,
I have
Alaska.
to cut that out, people.
No, I loved it.
These questions were good except for that one. How would you classify your art?
I guess in terms of the comics and the graphic novel series that I'm working on, I would say that's more so like fantasy. Not necessarily dark sci-fi, more so fantasy.
Okay.
But in terms of just like all the art that I typically do, in terms of like murals or other children's books and stuff like that, I would say grounded fiction mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I brought this all this sci-fi and Jedi stuff.
Yeah.
You know, may the Force be with you all in the month of May, and you know, I always liked that. And then Obi-Wan today. We'll see if that's a solid series or not. But I digress. I always digress.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rocky.
To your work. So it's really nice. And I think even within the work that you do now, you're integrating a sense of atmosphere, even with this that you're a part of. So I'll put this up and we'll probably show it to you guys post-production.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think you have such a strong sense of atmosphere that like figures and, the actual things relating to like human beings or living things are not necessarily the most important thing in your frame for me.
Yeah.
So I do like that. But thank you for joining our conversation on procrastination.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It took a while to get here.
It took a while to get here. Yeah, we're glad you're here. So I must also reveal to our audience, I've worked with Michael on a book. It's called The Call.
The Call. Yes.
And so that's definitely one of those places where I was able to procrastinate and Michael was able to see a little bit of it. But to kind of get things started, how do you see yourself in the kind of spectrum that is procrastination? Do you feel like you're a procrastinator?
I definitely procrastinate.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, you're perfect for this.
I'd say both intentionally and unintentionally. I've at times I procrastinate because it gives me enough time to work on other stuff. So if I'm too busy, I procrastinate on certain things so that I can give time to other things that are either due sooner or that are quicker to be done.
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm going to work on something and I have like all this time to work on it, I'm not going to work on it and finish it quickly and not touch it again. I'm going to be working on it constantly over and over and over for the amount of time that I have available.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that's always a good thing because you can overwork something.
Yeah.
So I try to give myself an allotted time to work on it, where I can like get the essentials done, maybe make a couple edits, but be happy with the product instead of like continuously working on it over and over and over. I typically approach it with the idea of like what's due next or what's due first, and then I focus on that, get it done, move on to the next thing. Yeah. At this point, I do have an idea of how I work and how long it takes to do something.
Yeah.
So I can gauge how long I need on a specific project. So if it is a large project that takes a much longer time, I wouldn't necessarily put it off completely until last minute. I'd work on a little bit now, and then maybe partway through I jump on another project.
Yeah. That's good for clients too, because they want to know like how long is this going to take, and they know we are artists, but they still like, okay, well, how long is this going to take?
Everybody has their own timeline. And I think it's important for us as artists to realize that we also need to hold or rest as important as the work that we do. And scheduling time to rest and scheduling time for, I guess, recreation or just, a downtime. That's just as important as going on to the next project, meeting deadlines and all of that. So that is where I would say intentional procrastination comes in as well. I'm intentionally putting this off because I need to prioritize my rest as well.
Wow, that's a good one. I'm not gonna lie, that actually does. Because I think oftentimes like people have the misconception that, hey, art is your joy, so you're gonna do it all the time and nothing else. If you have any free time, you're gonna art and nothing else.
No,
I gotta have fun. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think some things that you said that jumped out as me is being an artist and understanding your workflow and understanding how much time you need on something, and when you're willing to give more time, and when you're like, I'm not willing to give any more time. It's done. And I think this brings me back to like school and like getting a ton of assignments due consistently on a time frame over and over, the pressure, and how that may be a challenge, the deadline, which we were talking about earlier, but in some ways it trains you to understand your work process. Hey, is this the kind of project that I can do in a week or two?
Definitely.
Or is it the work that I can do shortly? So I think I'm really happy that you bring out that.
So what would you say you guys' like most precious commodity is?
Oh, man. I mean, I feel like I should have said time immediately, but I'm gonna give it a moment and think about it.
All right, Mike.
I'm a loss of words as well. It is a combination of many things. At certain points, it is time. At certain points, it is, I guess, money.
Okay.
Or like meeting the needs and the provisions that you have in that moment. So, for example, I might have, let's say, 7 projects working on for a month, and those 7 projects won't necessarily cover the bills that I need. My priority there is going to be very different from if I have one project only working for the entire month and it's covering all the bills that I need.
Okay, very nicely.
It's figuring out how to juggle and adapt based on the situation.
Yeah, I think you definitely got quite a few gems from you, Michael. I think for our audience watching, I hope you can kind of get a sense of like the methods of how procrastination can be a bad thing, but it can also be a good thing if you have the control over your time. Some of the things we talked about are the ways that it can harm you, whether it is you're not actually intending on doing the work. If that procrastination is laziness, then that's probably not a good thing. But then if it's, hey, I have a few things that I really want to work on, and this takes priority, as you mentioned, Mike, I think that's really a good point to kind of stop on.
This is Professor Rex signing off, people.
This is Michael Talbot signing off.
This is Rocky signing off. The Starving Artist Podcast.
Starving Artist Podcast.
The Starving Artist Podcast.